Well, I'm no journalist, I'm a math teacher, I'm a tutor, so we can jump right in, Mr. O'Neill. And it's Barnaby. Is that how you pronounce
That's
it?
my last name. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, sir.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name is Mr. Oneil Barnaby. I am the founder and director of the Black Math Academy. A little few tidbits about myself. I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Maryland. Let's see. I graduated from in high school from Archbishop Carroll High School in D.C. Got a track scholarship to run track at the Division I level
Mhm.
at Mount St. Mary's University, where I also majored in mathematics and minored in history as well. Graduated in '08, and that was when the housing market crashed. So not exactly a good look at that point.
Fun time.
So I was kind of bouncing around from odd job to odd job here and there. Found this tutoring spot. It was cool. I made a little cash on the side and something that I actually obviously majored in. So that was great.
Mhm.
So I just kind of put my ear to the streets and hustled a little bit, studied the game, built my own company called the Black Math Academy, and the rest is, as they say, history.
That's wonderful. So you saw a need, you met the need, and here we are with the Black Math Academy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that you were an athlete at the D1 level because we're actually doing a series. In my group, I tutor or I train once a week with topics dealing with ACT and
Okay.
kind of related to that. And the last Wednesday of every month, I deal with student athletes, right? Because they have a special place in my heart. I was an athlete in high school as well. Didn't play at the college level, but all of my siblings have played, and I have nieces and nephews that are, looking to play at the college level and work with
Okay.
students. So, like I said, a special place in my heart for student athletes. So, I'm glad to have you here to feature you as a D1 athlete, a veteran, a math tutor, your insight in these topics. Okay. So,
Sure.
um, you said you ran track, right? Did you do
Yes, I
any?
did. In high school, I did five sports. In fact, I did basketball, football, soccer, track, and lacrosse. Believe it or not. So yes, at one point, yeah, because lacrosse is a spring sport, and so is track. So I remember that one junior year that I tried to do both at the same time, and that was grueling to say the least. So I decided not to do that again. But yeah, I did those sports.
I was going to ask us, like, how did you juggle five sports at once? I mean, like, I can't even imagine, you know, two things was too much for me and academics and all of that. So,
Right.
kudos to you. Kudos.
Appreciate that.
When did coaches start actively recruiting you? Do you
Uh, Typically, it's when you start showing results. That's really when they start, and those results have to be pretty significant.
remember?
So at the Division I level, what I did was this one school, well, Mount St. Mary specifically. I contacted the head coach there and asked him, well, straight up, like, what are you looking for? Let me know what I have to run to be able to get a scholarship. He gave me the time limit for a specific event, the 800. I was like, okay, cool. I went and hit it. Um, and after I did that, that's when other schools started paying attention and trying to gain my attention to attend their school as well.
Okay.
So yeah, typically it's when you actually start showing results. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Boys in the Hood. Morris Chestnut's character,
Yeah.
because he was a football player trying to get out of the neighborhood,
Mhm.
and his neighborhood obviously wasn't all that great. So to see a head coach specifically come to that neighborhood to his house and talk to him about getting a scholarship, that's a sign right there that they really, really want you. That they don't really come to your house like that, then they're really not looking for for you to be there.
Okay. So I heard two very important things in that answer because first you mentioned that you reached out to the coach at the school that you were interested in. So
Right,
you didn't wait on them to find you, discover you, so to speak. You contacted the coaches directly. Is that right?
right. Hmm.
Okay. And so you already knew you were interested in that school.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great, great. So I think that's something to kind of zone in on, those of you watching that he didn't wait for them to make the first move. He initiated contact. Okay, so, just want to make sure that people are picking up on these nuggets that you were dropping. And then the second thing you said that I caught on to was that the coaches will come to your house, to your residence, if they're really, really interested.
Right. The real top tier talent. I mean, people who are really up there, your LeBron James, your Kevin Garnett, people like that who show really professional prowess at the high school level. They definitely use their resources to come see you personally, not just at your games, but really where you are.
Okay.
That's definitely a sign.
That's good.
As well.
That's good. Now, can you kind of go into detail exactly like what that recruitment process was like for you?
Oh, sure. So, nobody that I knew, family or anything like that, really knew about the process like that. So the only piece of advice I got from them was to make sure that they paid for everything, which is not a bad piece of advice. It makes sense. But when I got to the different campuses, you stay with the student there who happens to be on the team, and you shadow them for a weekend. They take you around, show you the campus, and then usually at the last day, you talk to the head coach specifically, and you discuss about what the process is going to be. So the one piece of advice I got about making sure I get the entire money to pay for the entire education was pretty important. I'll give you an example because I went to Georgetown to get recruited, and the head coach told me at the time that I wasn't even going to get a scholarship until my senior year of college. I'm like, well, what's the point? I'm going to be here for 3 years, and Georgetown is not exactly a cheap school. I really need this money to pay for this education, but I won't be able to get that kind of money until my senior year. So it's that type of information you got to talk to coaches about to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, but they would be expecting you to play before your senior year, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it's almost like a
for free,
proving yourself every time sort of approach, which is not so much a bad thing, but I thought I did already. That's the reason why I'm sitting here in your office.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting too. Now, so you went to those 2 schools for recruitment, went to their campus, and you were there for a couple of days in that process. Is that right?
A few more, but yeah.
Okay. Now, how did the NCAA eligibility, and the academic requirements come into play?
So this is before internet is as big as it is today. 2004. So most people still didn't have the internet in their homes like that, and it was still dial-up too. So luckily we did, and I looked up the information at the time NCAA Clearinghouse website. Now it's called I believe it's called the Eligibility Center. That's the website's name, where you can find all this information spelled out for you, the exact guidelines as to what you need to do academically and athletically to obtain the scholarship. So they straight up tell you that, here are the grades to get the lower amount of aid that a particular school can provide, and then the GPA side of it as well as the standardized test, the SAT and the ACT, what level they want you to hit in terms of being able to get a scholarship.
Now, can a person meet those requirembecause for the NCAA? And is it possible to not meet the admissions requirements for the school they really want to go to?
Yeah, that because they're separate entities. That's why the school ultimately has that power in terms of whether they want to, accept you to their school or not. That's an admissions thing. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say that there was some level of maneuvering, shall we say, that goes on. So I'll give you another example because it happened to me too. That even though I never physically filled out the application for Georgetown, I actually did get accepted because the coach did it on my behalf. So again, these things can happen. Yeah. So I'm definitely grateful for that. I'm not saying that I wasn't, I didn't care. And the aid that I got, being that my family we weren't wealthy. So I got the maximum amount of aid that the government could provide and the school could provide, but there was still a gap that I couldn't pay.
Yeah.
So ultimately it's up to the school to accept you, and then all the other bureaucratic red tape that exists has to be taken care of too, if it's there.
Yeah, I like to say that the admissions requirements are so you can get into the school, and the NCAA eligibility lets you know if you can compete.
Okay, that's an idea.
Kind of to let people know, because some people think
That makes sense to me.
Meet this one, then I'm guaranteed this, and it's like there's no guarantee. So you want to make sure that you meet both requirements. Now, you need to tell us, like, paint the picture of you academically.
Oh, I was a very good student, in fact.
You have
3.5 GPA overall, National Honor Society, top 10 scholar among my particular class, honors class, it's a certificate of merit. Now, I know it's a little bit different across the states. They have different terms for it, but basically the APs or honors, I took those. Yeah, I was a very good student.
good. So you were not on the borderline there of being eligible and not being eligible.
Oh, not at all.
Exactly, right. Sometimes we run across students and they're like right there on the borderline, and they're like, they need a 1600.
Right.
On the
That's
SAT,
happening.
perfect 36 in order to qualify. And it's like, if you do yourself some justice on the front end, then you won't need this miracle score on the back end, right? So
Right.
I think it's great that you're coming on here as a stellar athlete and also somebody who is strong academically and showing that, hey, it takes both parts, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. You really allow me to follow up on that. It puts you in the best position possible because it gives you room to maneuver in another area. So if your grades are lacking for whatever reason, you can make up for it in another. But practically speaking, that's not something that people really do. I mean, if you're lacking in grades, then your GPA or your SAT scores will probably do the same thing too. So it is important for you to maintain good time management skills when you're in high school, so you can afford that. Particularly us as athletes, when I was young, the whole talk about the dumb jock, the movie Coach Carter came out at the time, which really put a spotlight on athletes and how they perform versus scholarships and grades and whatnot. When it comes to athletes, we lack the time. In fact, we go to school like everybody else does, but after school, we have to practice. We have to work out. We've got the games and the meets. Where who may, not you specifically, but anybody who's not an athlete or someone doesn't have a job or something, you go straight home after school. So you've got all this time to study. You got all this time to be a brilliant scholar, but we have less time. So what's your excuse when you don't have the same responsibilities as we do?
Right.
So I would definitely encourage people to really look at that dynamic and yes, maintain that sort of balance. Do what you got to do in terms of the athletic side. Apply that same level of vigor when you're doing the academic side as well. You see how it will pay off dividends.
Absolutely. And it makes you more selective when it comes down to, are you going to be admitted into that you want to play for, or are you going to be the one making the choice? Or are you just settling for what get an offer?
That's right.
Making yourself as selective as possible. And I think student athletes really are the most responsible people in high school, the ones that can balance the academics and the sports. Those students really, they gain something that students that don't compete usually don't get. You know what I mean? Working in teams and building up just that consistency and balancing in life, time management for sure, like you said.
Cool.
What was it like in school running track for St. Mary?
It's the next level up, as they say. The competition in high school was definitely there. Don't get me wrong, but as you move up the ladder, you definitely start to realize that more and more people, across the country, that has just as much talent as you do, if not more. So you definitely have to put your ego to the side. Yeah, you were good in your neighborhood, like on your block, but yeah, when you step out of the city, then it's a totally different story. That's why they take you to all these real serious training that you haven't really experienced in high school. So there's that. And the level of resources and access to resources that colleges have as well. I mean, they are funded pretty well, private and public. So they'll take you to different trainers that most people don't have access to, or different facilities that most people don't have access to. I remember when I took some courses over the summer, and the basketball team at our school, the coaches organized for all of them to actually show up during the summer, take courses, and also work out together, which they really haven't done before. And because of that, they were able to bond socially as a result. They were much more comrade-like, and also played a role in how they performed on the court as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's good. Like, I would imagine that the time management piece came into play a lot more at the college level. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. In a more specific, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I remember being a math major, getting my undergrad, and I didn't do anything in college extracurricular, and that was me. I'm just saying, earning that math degree was super hard in college, and so I can't imagine being an athlete at the same time at the college level, working on a STEM degree and history. You said as well.
Yeah, and history too. I reminded of that.
That's bananas. That's bananas. So here, like, we want to know, what advice do you have, having gone through the process, playing in high school, going through recruitment, playing in college? What advice would you give, high school sophomore, freshman, junior now, in order to, kind of navigate this process?
Okay. I guess if I had to shorten it to 2 words, I'd say be prepared. The Boy Scouts motto is just those 2 words. It seems cliche, but it's pretty poignant. Like I was saying earlier, that no one I really knew around me had any experience with this process, so it was new to me. But I wanted to make sure that I had all the information I could get beforehand, so that when I do go to the table, that I, like you said, put myself in the best position possible. Effectively, I would say in a position of power. So when you put yourself there, you're the one who has to get to dictate at the negotiation table, as opposed to what they say. So if you are indeed as good as you say, athletically and academically, you definitely pay off dividends for the school itself. The Missouri football team some years back is proof of that. When their president didn't address some of the racial issues on the football team at the school, so they decided not to play. And not playing hit their purse strings, and that affected the position of the president at the time, which ultimately got him fired, and got the players what they wanted. So you can apply that to your own situation too, as a person who's a sophomore being recruited. Be prepared. And one way to do that is to hang out with people who are smarter than you. And that's what I would say. Find these people who know about the recruiting process, who know about the NCAA clearinghouse, who know about scholarships, who know about the grades you have to get to maintain it and to keep your scholarship. What's college like? When you get there, what happens at that point? If you can lose your scholarship, what does it take to do that? Some of the benefits of having a scholarship. There are some perks with that as well. Learn as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And now you work with students and student athletes, like, every day. You tutor them, and you also help them with this process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There are any athletes or parents out there that are listening to this interview right now, and they need assistance, maneuvering NCAA eligibility and the recruitment process, or just math help? You're available to do that, right?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, like you said, hang out with people that are smarter than you. And I know my lane, and I stay in it, right? So
Okay.
I deal with algebra, geometry, calculus, like that side of math. Statistics, I don't touch. That's not my lane, but I know it's yours. Okay.
Okay.
So talk to us, as a statistician, what's the probability of going pro or being able to play at the next level after we mastered the college level?
Okay. Interesting you say that, because in one of my workbooks, I have a problem that talks about that specifically, more so towards Black athletes. It's more of a microcosm of that. So as you go up the ladder from high school to college to professional, the number of people who make it drop significantly, actually exponentially, in that aspect. So you have to think about that as well, that the likelihood of any particular person making it to the professional level is below 3%. It's not high at all. So what you can do, since we're talking about statistics, that you can actually sort of manipulate them in your favor, the best way you can. I think LeVar Ball and his sons are a good example of that. They were relatively not known in terms of basketball outside of their father. But when he got control of their image and the brand that they have, he was hyping them up. He made them look very talented, and ultimately all three of them made it to the NBA. I'm not saying that they're trash. I'm not saying that. But that's the kind of maneuvering you can do to put yourself in that position. But yeah, the likelihood of getting to the professional level is not high. So while it's great to be there, don't get me wrong, you need to have a backup plan. You need to have something else in the holster that can also get the job done that you want.
Right. And it can still be sports related, even though you may not be competing, right? I have a nephew who had an interesting take about going pro, a dual athlete sport, basketball and football. But he says he wants to pursue the football career because he said I'm more likely to go pro because there's more people playing on the field at one time.
Okay. So mathematically, yeah, he's actually right. He would have a point there. But again, he wouldn't be the only one. I mean, if you've ever been to Texas, to Florida, states like that, where football is like apple pie, that it would be pretty difficult to stand out. So you would have to do something amazing to do so. Right. I'm not saying you can't do that, but just realize the reality that you're in. Yeah, you may be good, but again, what we were talking about earlier, what are some of the signs that show that people are interested in you? Yeah, you're interested in yourself. I get that. You probably got your own highlight reel and all that. That's cool. But what about the people who actually make decisions? People who can bring you into the fold, people who give you money. What are they?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time and being here and answering the questions and sharing your expertise on this topic. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to tell the people before we get on?
Well, thank you for bringing me on. I really appreciate that. I'm always humble when people bring me on to their platforms and their programs to allow me to speak. Never thought this would happen one day, but this is actually a great thing. As far as like one last thing to say, one thing that I give my students that I talk to them all the time about is that one thing that they should shoot for or strive for is to be the smartest person in the room. Because once you become the smartest person in the room, you're the authority on the subject. And when you're the authority on the subject, you're the one who's actually in a position of power. No one can tell you anything. Right. So I definitely want to encourage people to be the smartest person in the room.
That's great. Thank you so much, Oneil. I appreciate it.